right. So here we go. Finishing up the lesson on the capital sins. I believe we talked about, I know we were on the deck last class. Did we get to lust? I don't think we did. All right. Lust, we've talked enough about. You should have gotten your notes that the opposite of envy is charity. I don't know if you got that. So envy is you want somebody to fail. You're upset at such and such a person. So to want somebody to succeed and experience goodness is charity. Okay, you all got that? Oh. And then, so we got two more capital sins to cover, and then we're going to talk about conscience. We're going to do the first half of lesson 3 today. All right. So lust doesn't need much explanation from me. It comes pretty naturally, actually. So lust is a unrestrained, inordinate craving for sexual pleasure. Which, of course, is, like I said, quite a natural desire, naturally experienced by the vast majority of humans. And it comes down to whether or not you can dictate your actions with or without, these desires and attractions. When they go above the good of a person in a relationship, that's, of course, when it is inordinate and not ordered rightly. As far as examples go, you probably don't even need to write them down, frankly. You know them so well. You're aware of them. They're very present among all y'all. Thank you, Cohen. Hello. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yes. All right. So you got examples of lust, which you probably don't need. The opposite of lust is chastity. Very good. Which isn't really defined here. It's just described. It's more described than defined. But chastity, of course, you're able to not act off of your sexual desires and passions when it is not fitting or appropriate or best for the relationship or respectful to the other person, etc., 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 or not, unitive and procreative. We did all this really when we talked about marriage. So there's not much more to say about it. Chastity is the proper ordering of your sexual desires in union with God's plan. So, all right, that kind of gets us caught up to the other classes. And today we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about something we haven't, which you probably gathered from the bell ringer, and that is gluttony. Defined as, once again, it's pretty much every capital sin here. It leads to sin when it's not controlled. Much of these come from emotions, feelings, and experiences that if you don't handle them, you have sins, and if you can handle them, you have virtues. But gluttony, of course, we all love food. We all need food to survive. And praise God that He made food delicious for us to desire. But gluttony is when we take that desire, just like lust, and we take it out of context. We don't recognize the goods of eating, which is, of course, health, strength, and community. When you share a big old crawfish boil with your family, the good of bonding over the same meal. Jesus, of course, gave Himself to us in a meal, just now at Mass. Eating is good. And so some examples of gluttony would be eating too much lunch. The reason why I say lunch because gluttony can, of course, happen for breakfast and dinner as well. But lunch is you still got work to do in the afternoon. You still got studying. You still got some of y'all have jobs. When you eat or plan a lunch, some of y'all may not have much say on what you eat for lunch at your age. But you want to eat responsibly. If you eat so much that you won't be able to learn in your next 2 classes, that might be gluttony, because you're putting yourself in a food coma when you're neglecting, what you need to do. The toughest class for me to teach every day is, well, on Mondays, it's the first class of the day. But on every other day of the week, I would say it's the class after lunch, because you're weighed down by your stomach, so your intellect isn't as sharp. And that may not be gluttony. That could be just natural, I understand. But you can't eat way too much and neglect what you have to do for the next 2 or 3 hours after lunch. So that's why I put lunch there. Overuse of medication, um, you know. So most of gluttony is food and drink. But if a doctor prescribes, like opioids, painkillers, and people get addicted to those very easily, if you don't need them and you keep taking them, then that would be a gluttony too. It's something consumed that gives you pleasure. Just devouring food. Guys can be guilty of this. I can be guilty of this when you're super hungry and whatever, you get your dinner there and you just you don't look at the people around you. You don't say thank you to the person that cooked it or served it. That can be like a little bit, like an animal. They don't want to eat like a pig. And of course, getting drunk intentionally. Now, so let's talk about the drunkenness part, which of course is what your bell ringer was about. This is one of many Bible passages that talks about the danger / evil of getting drunk. I think I gave you one last week where St. Paul said, don't hang out with drunkards. It's bad for you. It's a bad influence. Here, Jesus is saying, don't get caught up in carousing and drunkenness, basically a party lifestyle. Because if you're living a party lifestyle, you're not focused on God, and you're not going to be ready to meet Him at all. So, and you all know people who live to party, and they're so proud of it. Here you have a Bible passage that Jesus says it's not Christian. It's not focused on God. It's not what's best for you, to put it lightly. I can give you more passages, maybe I will next class, about how drunkenness is really presented as a serious evil in the Bible, both Old and New Testament. So I give you this strange question. Somebody offers you pills, and these are the side effects. 5% chance of blacking out, completely forgetting what happens. There's a 0.2% chance of death, 4 times more likely to need / depend on this pill in the future, 5 times more likely to experience a grade drop in school, and an increased risk of depression and anxiety. Do you take that pill? No. These are the numbers I've been getting from the other classes. There's 1 or 2 people that are really strange, and they put maybe. These are the side effects of binge drinking. You're, of course, likely to blacking out. Y'all are probably familiar with that one. There is always that chance of alcohol poisoning and death, which happens probably on a large amount. You don't even realize, because nobody likes to talk about it. Happens on college campuses every year. A lot of fraternities, of course, and sororities, when they put those people initiating, they put them through all these drinking challenges. A lot of kids die doing that. And, those fraternities and sororities, they get shut down eventually. But there is a small chance of death with binge drinking. 4 times more likely to need to do it. You become dependent. It becomes a part of your life. It becomes a bad habit. Gluttony becomes a vice, all this. So you're going to need that more in the future. Your motivation and awareness in school, of course, is not going to be helped by this weekend activity, if it is only a weekend activity. And of course, alcohol, if you don't know, alcohol functions as an antidepressant. And nobody wants to be on antidepressants. A lot of people are, but and maybe that's best for their mental state. But the problem with antidepressants is it does carry you for a time being, but it drops you harder and harder. And so it's very hard to get off antidepressants. It's just not. It's not good. It's necessary for some. I'm not telling you anything bad about antidepressants. What I'm saying is you don't want to give yourself an antidepressant in alcohol if you don't need to, especially at your age. A couple other stats that you may not be aware of. If you start drinking at the age of like 13 to 15, like a lot of y'all did, you're 10 times more likely to be an alcoholic. If you start drinking at your age regularly, you are 5 to 8 times more likely to be an alcoholic. The age in which you start drinking has a big impact on your addiction, your need, and the vice that comes about. So it is very important that you're aware of this.
When you say alcohol, do you mean drink every day or get drunk every day?
Definitely not getting drunk. I have to go back to the studies. I read a lot. I did a lot of this research 2 or 3 years ago. But what I remember is to drink regularly, and I think that would imply on a monthly basis. If you are drinking on a monthly basis, you're really exposing yourself to downfalls in the future. Are you going to become an alcoholic? Did Mr. Pale say you're going to become an alcoholic? No. What I'm saying is you're maybe as much as 8 times. Some of y'all 10 times more likely to get there. And of course, all the other damage that it does to your motivation and, of course, your liver and kidneys. So none of you would take that pill with those side effects, but these are the numbers that it was a lot of pleading the fifth here. How often do you drink alcohol? Y'all are much more ready to go into that. I don't know how much y'all binge drink, of course, multiple drinks in one night. When you do drink, but a lot of y'all are much more open to alcohol, but you wouldn't take that pill. Well, what I described was the same thing. Have some fun, act like an adult for a night, and get a buzz maybe. But then there's like these long-term, even short-term ramifications from doing that. That, of course, is in your culture. It's in the Cajun culture. It's very deep, big drinking atmosphere. But from the looks of these stats, one quarter of y'all are on a dangerous track. And I ran the numbers. I think these numbers are a little bit better than when I last did this, like 2 or 3 years ago. But when I ran the numbers about 2 or 3 years ago, and I took the frequency of junior students and how much they drink, the stats say about 20% of Turling's graduates end up as alcoholics. 20%. That's serious. That's a row in every class, you know. So this ain't fun and games, There's real problems. Now, is it wrong? But for the record, it's legal for you to drink with your parents, public and at home. It's legal. I don't have anything against you experiencing a drink with your parents responsibly and calling it there. Every once in a while, special occasions, of course. That's a mature way to approach it. I don't think most of y'all are doing that. And so I challenge you to find a more mature, safer, healthier way. It's not good for your soul and it's not good for your body. And so I just wanted to educate you a little bit on this. I'm not going to, I don't think, some of y'all did such an impact last year. We teach you not to drink and drive, but drinking is such a downfall of a lot of y'all that I don't know why at a Catholic school we don't encourage you to just not drink at all. So I've kind of, whenever I get to Glendian morality, I throw this little discussion piece out there. Any questions y'all have about alcohol, the usage of alcohol?
The question before that, it said it drops, increases grade drop in school.
Yeah.
Well, I know people from where I'm from, built and it's all foamers, and they drink. I know people that drink a case of beer every day, and they live till they're 80. I know they live till they're 80, drinking every day, and they don't they're very successful in their
Farming.
And they don't nothing drops off with
Yeah. If I had a guess, these farmers have been farming for a long, long time. They grew up doing it, and it's very much ingrained into them, as much as the alcohol. Yeah. Um, this is nothing against farmers, but it's not the highest intellectual, profession. So as far as like their need to do high level math and problem solving and surgery and the like. They don't need to. So if they grow up farming, if it's ingrained into their family dynamics and their culture, and so is the drinking, yeah, they could succeed. Of course, we'll leave it to their doctor. Every doctor will tell them that a case of beer, a 6 pack a day, is not good for them, and that's just science. Can they live into their 80s? Sure, it's possible. Um, with what capacity and what they're missing out on, that's a medical question. Um, so yeah, um, I don't know if I have anything else to say because really at that point it becomes less of a worry about their intellectual state, and there is always the chance of addiction that they probably have. To be honest with you, to whatever degree, and then it becomes a health issue that I think every doctor would say that level of alcohol is not good. There's actually a real movement that alcohol is actually a lot worse for us than we think. I saw some documentary on Netflix. I didn't watch it, but examines all the ill effects of alcohol. That a lot of like really healthy people are just dropping alcohol for the health reasons. Actually, they say if you can avoid it altogether, you can do great. Having drinks on special occasions isn't going to be detrimental, but for the really healthy people, there's a movement right now to drop it altogether, which I'm not necessarily promoting. I'm just letting you know. Um, Regular drinking is gonna allow you to do or not do a lot. All right. So just things to think about, so you can say that you're aware. This is my favorite stat to say every year. Whether we're talking about sex, we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about drinking alcohol. 90% of addictions occur in y'all's lives right now. Your sexual addictions. Like I have a distant family member who was a sexaholic anonymous, like went to group counseling because they were addicted to sex. And it started with, Lord have mercy, their babysitter when they were young, you know? Like when you're exposed to something so young, whether it be drinking alcohol or sex, your brain is going to latch onto it, expect it, crave it more and more and more. Y'all's brains are very much developing. I'm 33. My brain just stopped developing. I'm stuck, you know? I can go back to school. I can learn more things. But as far as new features and new ways for my brain to solve problems, I'm set. Doesn't mean I can go get drunk every weekend. No. But it means that I'm less at risk, than y'all. But if I was 25, even I would still be under some risk of forming an addiction. But if you can get through high school and much of college without drinking regularly, smoking regularly, you are building up the virtue of temperance, and that temperance will carry you through life. If you can get through the peer pressure in your early days, you're going to avoid peer pressure the rest of your life. And so I'm telling you that now the next 5 years of your life is, you don't realize how much that sets the stage for everything. Everything. You know, I think you should totally respect the law of America that says you don't drink till you're 21, unless it's with your parents, and of course, responsibly. I think if you just follow that law, you're in good shape. I know a lot of other countries, it's 16 and 18. I traveled Europe, and they got alcohol issues over there. Some people say, "Oh no, they don't," because they learned to do it responsibly. It's not what I saw. I saw a lot of sad stories. I saw a lot of entire towns that teenagers were largely addicted to drinking. Um, I saw big gatherings of young kids just hanging out and drinking and doing nothing else productive. You're not going to be as motivated to play sports when partying is this easy. So I really, Really think you got to honor that civil law and to be sensitive to it, especially when it's unofficial prom season. Not a bad time to do this. All right. So the opposite of gluttony is temperance, and we already talked about temperance because that's one of the cardinal virtues. The ability to control, enjoy all things in moderation, whether it be cupcakes, sausage, crawfish burgers, or Jack Daniels. You know, but you probably shouldn't have it all because that stuff is so heavy. All right. That's it. Any last questions on gluttony, drunkenness, and carousing? Just going to do the first half of this lesson. It's pretty simple. Lesson. The first half we're going to do today is going to talk about what does your conscience do, and then next class we'll talk about how to form it. I'm just going to check when this mass ends. Virtual 50. We got plenty of time. All right. Mass ends at 9:51. No, it says you got here at 9:56. So you go to 10:50. You got like 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. All right. So what is your conscience? I'm going to actually stay with this title side for a little bit. Conscience. Science actually just means knowledge, and con, of course, with knowledge. So you have this natural awareness of moral knowledge, this natural insight into right and wrong, and conscience is typically referred to as a person's moral compass. And so that's why you have this artsy image here of somebody with a compass in their head. Where is your conscience directing you to go as far as good and evil? Not north and south, but good and evil. And so that's kind of what your conscience is. It's this moral compass. And we're going to evaluate today the importance and the value of it, for you to be aware of it, for you to listen to it. And then next class, we'll talk about how to make sure your conscience is pointing you in the right direction. So, first, it's defined as this awareness of a moral aspect to one's conduct. You're aware that when you go to class, you're supposed to sit up, be respectful, raise your hand, take notes maybe. I say maybe because every year there's 2 or 3 brilliant students that don't take notes and get straight A's in my class. I'm not going to tell them to take notes if they don't need to. But your conscience tells you, okay, come on, stay awake. Make the most out of this. Your conscience tells you when you're scanning through social media at night, your conscience is telling you time to put it away, time to do homework, time to study. And you're like, no, I'm not done. I'm not all caught up. Instagram didn't tell me that I'm okay, and it goes on. This is a powerful quote from the Catechism. You don't need to write down, but it describes the conscience that we have, that deep within his conscience, man discovers a law which he has not laid upon himself, but which he must obey. Its voice, ever calling him to love and to do what is good and avoid evil, sounds in his heart at the right moment. For man has in his heart a law inscribed by God. His conscience is man's most secret court in his sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depths. That this conscience is really your hope, your guide, and your direct connection to God every day. Because your conscience and God are directly related, as we will see. You're going to get a 1, 2, 3. 3 more slides for today. And it's a 1, 2, 3 of the 3 things that your conscience does, the 3 functions it performs. And if it's a 1, 2, 3, you know that it's going to be a
Short answer.
so smart. My second smartest class of the year. Your conscience, the first one is the most obvious one. The next 2 are better. But the first one is that it judges between right and wrong. More specifically, it cultivates virtues. It roots out vices. So your conscience is telling you you know what, I got to work out more. You know what, I got to eat healthier. Those are all virtues of temperance and discipline, and that's your conscience talking to you. Then you got vices, of course. We all got our vices. It could be as serious as pornography. It could be as small as biting your nails. In front of other people, it's considered bad form in our culture. That could be a vice, and your conscience says, "Oh, nope, don't do that." So that's the role of conscience, directing you, of course, between right and wrong. You have the stereotypical image of conscience, cartoon style, depicted here on the slide with the good angel and the bad angel, and you've seen all those cartoons growing up. That's a vision of what your conscience is, directing you to do what is good. You know what is bad. And that what is good, what is bad is not necessarily demonic. Sometimes it can be a devil, a demon talking to you, but more often than not, it's just your concupiscence and your awareness that I know I shouldn't be, for example, drinking, but it's just kind of fun, but it's just kind of cool. That's number one, and that's your conscience. Number two, conscience functions as the voice of God. This is one of my favorite things to teach about conscience, if not my favorite thing to teach, because most of you would say, if I asked you, has God ever spoken to you? Most of you would probably say, no, not really. I believe in him, Mr. Pale, but I just never heard God speak to me. God speaks to you every day, and he uses your conscience. Okay? He's the one telling you, get to your homework. Say hi to your parents. Check in with your parents. Go do your chores. Like this, these are oftentimes God reminding us and keeping us on the path. Quit this addiction. Be careful. Get out of this relationship. These are things God talks to you with every day. It's a little distracting. We're almost there. Yeah. After this class. And the fact that the teacher's teaching is a factor too. Voice of God. So your conscience bears witness to this authority of truth in reference to the supreme good to which the human person is drawn. And it welcomes the commandments. This is the main part, this last sentence here. When he, mankind, listens to his conscience, the prudent man can hear God speaking. It's you can tap in to God. You can know that he's with you. You just have to be quieter. You just have to let your conscience talk to you. I think a lot of us, you live in a noisy world. It's easy to get distracted and blow it off. Don't do that. Slow down. That's why I give you a minute every class to be present to God. A lot of times in those minutes, you might say, oh, I'm not praying. I'm not hearing God. Sometimes you just slow down and think about, how am I feeling today? What's going on in my life? Even if you don't hear the voice of God, your conscience is going to whisper. And that could be the voice of God. You just got to slow down and pray every day to hear it. Number two is conscience is the voice of God. Number three is equally important because it's all about being happy. The goal of life, right? If you are blowing off your conscience, doing things that your parents told you are wrong, but you're just going to go have fun and do them and try to justify them, you're not going to be happy. You're going to be conflicted. You're going to be further from your family. You're not going to be as honest and at peace at home. You're following your conscience is one of the top things to live a happy life, to live the moral life that you believe is right. You have to follow your conscience, the church will teach. Our happiness is found in having a well-formed and clean conscience. The happiest people in the world are confident. On the flip side, people that don't follow if they don't follow their conscience, a lot of the mean people maybe on campus, maybe in your families, are people who are struggling with their conscience, and they cast guilt on other people because they struggle with their own guilt so much. It can create very nasty people who aren't able to find peace in their conscience or in following their conscience. So if you're struggling in life, ask yourself, how well am I doing in my fight against sin and in following my conscience? These are your three functions, the three things that your conscience does. I want to show you just one little video to give you an image of your conscience after people are done taking this note.